Hey guys, and welcome to today's video. So it is already 2022 and we think there's going to be a pretty big year for cloud gaming ahead for us. 2021 saw an awful lot of things happening with cloud gaming. GeForce Now went full streaming, came out of beta. Microsoft xCloud pretty much fully launched and started to roll out to multiple different devices, got an upgrade in its streaming quality. Things like Amazon Luna started to really take hold, and even Netflix got in on the game. So there's a lot that's been happening with cloud gaming, and we think 2022 is going to be even bigger. So this video is about our predictions, what we think is going to happen, and just some of the things that we hope are going to happen as well. So let's get on with it. I was going to start off by saying I haven't scripted this, I haven't written any notes or anything, so it's just going to be some ramblings from the top of my head about some of the things that I'm thinking we might see from cloud gaming. So first up, let's just talk about the cloud gaming scene in general rather than just any of the platforms. I think we're going to see some massive growth. There's going to be so much happening. We've seen a lot already starting to take off with new players coming into it, the likes of Netflix, for example. Amazon are really pushing hard now to really get Luna up and running. And we've seen things like Google Stadia, GeForce Now, and Microsoft xCloud really starting to grow. Honestly, the biggest shakeup I think we're going to see with cloud gaming this year is probably going to be a move from Sony when they're starting to finally bring out PlayStation and make it into, I guess, a competitor to something like Game Pass and Microsoft xCloud. At the moment, Microsoft are killing it when it comes to Xbox and PC Game Pass, and their xCloud service is getting better, although it does still have some lengths to go. If Sony can bring out something that really competes with it, then I think we might start seeing, I guess, just a battle between the two big gaming platforms in the cloud instead of just when it comes to hardware. We'll probably start to see a lot of the little upstarts kind of moving into it, ones that don't really have a handle on the gaming market at the moment, so like Netflix have attempted so far, and who knows who else might jump in on it. It'd be really interesting to see something from Valve, but that's definitely a wish. It's not something that we're thinking we'll see at all, but it would be lovely to see. I mentioned earlier, as internet connections get better, and the big one there is not necessarily your home internet, but things like 5G. As 5G starts to roll out, becomes more accessible, it becomes more available on more different devices, I'm sure we'll start to see an uptake in cloud gaming as that internet connection does get better on the mobile phones and tablets as well. Probably the biggest blocker at the moment in terms of cloud gaming is Apple, and whether or not we'll see kind of a move from them, who knows. There's been a lot of talk and a lot of sort of like leaked files and stuff that's come out in their court case versus Epic, where they have been considering cloud gaming, but to do that means they have to let everybody else in, and it also kind of brings up all the antitrust stuff as well, because if they've been blocking it up until now and they only allow cloud gaming when they bring out their own service, it's going to cause a lot of legal issues for them, so who knows what will happen there. It would be nice to finally see Apple kind of just pull that stick out of their asses and allow cloud gaming applications through their phones, but who knows? At the end of the day, Apple will be Apple, and we have no idea what they'll do. But at the end of the day, 5G is becoming more accessible, which makes cloud gaming on the go a lot more accessible to people and a realistic option for them. Now, moving on to some predictions, and the first one is going to be with Microsoft, and I believe Microsoft are going to have an absolutely massive year when it comes to cloud gaming. They smashed it last year when it came to Game Pass. They really did quite an aggressive rollout when it came to xCloud. They rolled it out obviously on Android first, and then they started to push it out so that you'd be able to use it on a PC, on older Xbox consoles, obviously iOS and iPad devices as well, and they were really aggressive with those rollouts. Between them announcing that it was going to happen and it actually landing on those devices was very fast. They upgraded their stream quality and so much else. Now granted, they do have a lot to do, and there's a lot of things they need to do in order to keep their quality up, to get their streaming right, to get their latency right, and they are pretty big things that they need to manage. But at the end of the day, I believe they're going to start really nailing that down, and partway through this year I believe we're going to see xCloud get into a very playable place and really start to rival that streaming quality we're used to getting from like GeForce Now or Google Stadia. With Microsoft as well, I think we're going to start to see things like their streaming sticks get rolled out and applications available on Android TV and just other TV partners as well. Makes a lot of sense for them. They seem to be moving more away from hardware and console generations into just being able to play Game Pass or just their games and everything else. I do hope, and this is a wish again, that we start to see the ability to buy games from like the Microsoft Store and then be able to stream them even if they're not on Game Pass, because that would be a very welcome option. NVIDIA GeForce Now, I don't think we'll see a massive amount, to be honest. We've seen some pretty big moves at the end of 2021 with the rollout of the RTX 3080 tier, and there's been some big news with that. Obviously, we've had increased streaming quality, we've had increased graphics and all of that jazz. So there's not a massive amount for them to do, really. Honestly, I'm hoping that when it comes to NVIDIA GeForce Now, we will start to see some kind of actual news and communication about the works they're doing with publishers in the background, because that is the big thing that holds that platform back at the moment. Although it is great to be able to play my Epic Games library or my Steam Games library, it is frustrating that there's so many games, you know, Capcom being a massive one there, that I can't play through the service. And I would absolutely love them to kind of just nail that down even if it means bringing in a slightly higher price tier. I'm sure they'll probably start to roll out to more countries and stuff like that, but at the moment the big news from Nvidia needs to really come from that work with partners and just kind of rolling out some more titles to the service, rather than like the 5 or 6 we've been seeing towards the end of last year, and I guess the 11 a week we've been seeing beforehand. Google Stadia is obviously an interesting one. It's one that we've covered quite a lot. We really enjoy the service and it works very smoothly for us. The big news that they need to be pushing this year is new titles. Absolutely has to be new titles. They've got the hardware now, you can buy things at a decent price. They've got the streaming quality and they've pretty much nailed all the latency and all the additional little features that you can get playing on Google Stadia. But the thing that it is lacking, and there's no disputing it, is titles. Now, they don't necessarily need to be, I guess, the Call of Duties and Battlefields, although that would be lovely to see something like that on there, just because it would help with the communication for getting people into the cloud gaming service. But it would be nice to see them move away from like Ubisoft indie titles and kids games and really start to nail down some of those later titles that are getting released for other platforms. Now, they don't do a bad job and they've got some pretty good games out there that we've played on there, but it would be nice to have a bigger selection, especially as Microsoft are pushing with xCloud, and if Nvidia start to really nail down their work with platforms, then it could become a little bit tricky for Stadia to compete. I do also have to wonder, will we see some upgrade with the Google Stadia hardware side of things? So that's the back-end stuff that streams the games. We started to see quite a few complaints from users where it's coming to games being limited to 30 frames per second, or they're running on what seems to be last-gen graphics. As next-gen consoles actually become more widely available, it's going to be harder for the likes of Google Stadia or any of the cloud gaming services to compete, because people will most likely stick to what they know. They're less likely to experiment when they actually have the choice. So what Google Stadia really needs to do is, I guess, upgrade their back-end. I personally think it looks fine at the moment, and I've had a real good time with it, but a lot of users have been complaining about the fact they're not getting the 60 frames per second or more, depending on what you're playing on, and they also want those next-gen graphics. So it is something that realistically they do need to sort out. So when it comes to the main 3 that we talk about, so your Google Stadia, your Microsoft xCloud, and your Nvidia GeForce Now, the biggest changes are pretty much going to be upgrades to their services and I guess getting some more games partners on board. But the ones that are probably going to make the biggest splash are going to be your Sony and your Amazons, because they have some big things in the pipeline. Now let's talk about Sony first, because that's probably one of the most interesting ones in my opinion at least. And personally I think that Sony are definitely going to have to do something that starts to rival Game Pass. Microsoft are doing some fantastic communication when it comes to it. They're constantly singing about how good Game Pass is, and to be honest, it is really, really hard to argue with the value proposition for that. Enough so that I'd be tempted to get an Xbox, and I've always been a PC gamer or a cloud gamer beforehand. When it comes to Sony, I do believe that they're going to bring out something that rivals it, and they bring in that subscription model, and it'll be great to see some PlayStation exclusives available for streaming. Now, I know they have PlayStation Now, but it's not the best. It's not available on most devices, and it's not the most accessible service, so it'd be nice to see them really, really push and evolve that. And hopefully the reason they've done nothing with it so much at the moment is because they're holding off until they pretty much nail it down and get enough titles on there and get that streaming quality absolutely spot on. If Sony do that and they do it well, honestly, I think that 2022, at least towards the end of 2022, the big battle in cloud gaming is going to be between Microsoft xCloud and with Sony and whatever they launch for their PlayStation streaming. So very much like in the game space at the moment, you have your PC gaming and then your console wars. Ultimately, that can then move across into the cloud gaming space. Moving across onto something that's a little bit more of an unknown is Amazon and what they're going to do. Luna seems to be doing pretty well at the moment. Obviously, it's in beta at the moment. We've not had a chance to play it because we're in the UK, so we can't get our hands on it. But by all accounts, it seems to be doing well, and they've got a lot in the pipeline for it. Now, Amazon is one of those companies that we all know is very, very aggressive when it comes into moving into a market. They are more than willing to let a product or a service run at a loss so that they can build it up and get a customer base. And I pretty much guarantee that Luna is going to be no exception for that. They've got their own game service in the background, so they are building their own games, and ultimately those will hopefully start to run on Luna rather than on competing services, but who knows, I guess we'll see. But at the end of the day, Amazon are not afraid to lose some cash in order to build a service and get customers on board. You just need to look at the likes of Kindle Unlimited, for example, which basically got a lot of authors on board. They ran it at a loss for years and years. I think they still are running it at a loss, but ultimately it then decimates everything else. As they roll this out and push it, it'll be very, very interesting to see what they do and how many developers they get on board and what that service looks like towards the end of the year. So honestly, once Amazon Luna starts to launch, I think it could do pretty well, especially if they start to bundle it in with the likes of Amazon Prime. It's going to be one of those extra services that they get to offer. They've got things like Twitch that's part of their gaming package. They've got their own game studio as part of the gaming package, and they're pretty much really gearing up to have it all in one basket. Whether or not they can pull it off, who knows? But at the end of the day, Amazon has the mentality, it has the money, and it has the willingness to keep pushing services even when others kind of look and go, actually there's not much use in it or it's hemorrhaging money. They will keep pushing those until they either make it a success or they just kind of fade it into prime. And then you've got your other little ones like Netflix, for example. I think they'll keep dipping their toes. It'll be a random little thing when we get these odd little games, but who knows what will happen with those. I don't think they're ever going to make a massive move into cloud gaming at the end of the day, or at least not this year, maybe next year or the year after, but I guess only time will tell. Apart from those companies that are already dipping their toes in cloud gaming, we'll most likely start to see other publishers and games companies starting to bring out their own cloud gaming services. Now, whether or not they use something like a white label service with Google Stadia, for example, to use that as their back-end and infrastructure, like we saw with Warner and Batman, who knows? But I could definitely imagine someone like Ubisoft wanting to bring out their own cloud gaming service and roll that out. So I guess we might start to see some either hints of it towards the end of the year, or sort of that rollout of beta services and tests throughout this year. So that's it for our predictions and kind of some of our wishes rolled into that as well for 2022 and cloud gaming. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. What are you hoping to see versus what do you think we'll see this year? I think it's going to be a very, very interesting year for cloud gaming. I've got to say, looking back on 2021, it seems to be the biggest year of growth I've seen in cloud gaming in terms of its speed and acceleration, and how many people are finally willing to give it a try and actually start to accept it. Towards the back end of 2019, when we started doing the cloud gaming content, there were always people interested in it, but a lot of people just talked about how it either didn't work, wasn't for them, or they just didn't believe it could work. Beginning of 2021, we start to see that kind of shift and people starting to get on board with it. And towards the end of the year, there were loads of people using it, loads of people telling us how much they loved using it and how much they enjoyed all the different services. So 2022, fingers crossed, we'll take that one step further and see some massive evolution when it comes to cloud gaming. As always, I hope you've enjoyed that video. Hope you've had a great new year, and we will see you soon for some more cloud gaming content. Bye for now.